Did you know there's roughly 300,000 churches in the United States of America? It's pretty unfathomable. And right now, they're decreasing in number by about 1% every year. In fact, around the world in continents like Asia, Africa, and South America, the church is rapidly growing, but the United States is not seeing that same effect. And I have a question for you. What would happen if your church just shut down? Like, I hope and pray that you're in a church right now. And what would happen if it just stopped existing? Would it change your life? Would it change anything about you? Would you just pack up and go to another church down the road? Well, what if every church closed down? Like, not even in your country, but around the world. What if they all shut down? How would that affect the world? I think some people might be happy about that prospect, and others, it would probably really hurt them. And we actually see an example of this in the Bible. See, there's a king in the Bible whose name was Ahaz, A-H-A-Z, kind of an odd name, but it was an Israelite king, and he was living in constant rebellion against God, to the point where God was actually going to turn away from him, no longer protect his kingdom, and give him over to his enemies. And Ahaz starts freaking out, to the point where he starts doing really dumb things. And normally, when I get desperate, I get stupid. They normally go pretty hand in hand. So I can see myself a lot here in Ahaz. And if you look in 2 Chronicles 28, we get to learn just a little bit about the end of his reign. It says this: Ahaz took valuable items from the Lord's temple, the royal palace, and from the houses of his officials, and gave them to the king of Assyria as a tribute. But this did not help. Even during his time of trouble, Ahaz continued to reject the Lord. He offered sacrifices to the gods of Damascus, who he defeated for him. That's such a powerful statement, I think. He continued to reject the Lord even during his time of distress. Man, it's so relatable that when we get desperate, we get stupid. But what we see Ahaz doing here is something that's really awful. He's not only going to his officials and going to his own house and trying to make a tribute to another king, which is rejecting God. You see, God is supposed to be their protector, but he's saying, if I can get enough money together, I can just buy off my enemies and my money will protect me. But not only that, he goes into the God's temple and he steals from it, with the hope that that will protect him. But then look what happens. In the very next couple verses, it says, the king of Assyria took the various articles from the temple of God and he broke them into pieces. He shut the doors of the Lord's temple so that no one could worship him there. And he set up altars to pagan gods in every corner of Jerusalem. He made pagan shrines in all the towns of Judah for offering sacrifices to other gods. In this way, he aroused the anger of the Lord, the God of his ancestors. Look, the temple was the way that the Jewish people connected with God. It was their primary way of connecting. Whereas as Christians, we believe that we can connect with God anywhere, at any time, in any place. The Jews didn't have that luxury. In fact, the Lord was specific about how specific Jews could connect and be in God's presence. So when he shuts the doors, he's shutting the doors to their connection. And while if the church doors have been shut across the world during our theoretical situation earlier, we could still have the opportunity to connect with God. There will be a time in our lives when our spiritual doors will be shut, and that is death. Death is there to put a permanent separation or unification with us and the Lord. In fact, I think it's such an interesting parable where Ahaz, he did all these evil things and the doors to God were shut. We live our lives rejecting God. And if it's not for Jesus, then our doors to heaven will be permanently shut, and our ability to come into God's presence will be permanently shut. See, we've all messed up. We've all done stupid in times of desperation, and this prevents us from being a part of God's kingdom. But it's through the grace of Jesus that while we broke God's law, he paid the fine. And that's why I think it's so important that we cherish the church. See, Jesus calls the church his bride. I think there's an excellent metaphor in that, where if I went up to you and you were married or dating someone and I said, man, I really like you. I'm a big fan of you. But your wife, your girlfriend, hate her. She's awful. That's what we do every time we say we don't like church. It's not really for us. We go to Jesus. We're like, man, we love you. You're a pretty awesome guy. But your wife, your bride, the church, terrible, awful. We need to stop viewing church as a burden and start viewing it as the solution. And that's when we'll start to cherish it. And not only that, we get a lot of awesome things out of church. All of my best friends go to church with me. And that's not something that I could have said just a couple of years ago. Church is the solution. It's not the problem. And it's a blessing that we get to be a part of Jesus and his mission through the church. I hope this gave you a new perspective on church. If it did, then please leave a like on this channel. It really does help out. And I'll see you back here later as we continue to read through scripture together.